Have you ever heard the story of the Lobster Boy? The circus performer turned killer? If not, then stick around, because you won't want to miss this freak show of a story. First, we'll talk about the life of young Lobster Boy and how he ended up with claws instead of hands. Then, we'll discuss his life as an adult before he became a cold-blooded killer. Finally, we'll cover how he literally got away with murder, but was then killed by his own family. Buckle up and get your popcorn ready, because this is going to be one wild ride. Grady Stiles Jr. was born in Pittsburgh in 1937. He was born with pincer-like hands and flipper legs. The scientific name for this unusual condition is ectrodactyly, where fingers and/or toes are fused together. The condition affects people differently. But in Grady Stiles Jr.'s case, he appeared to have two perfect lobster claws. His father, Grady Sr., also had the same condition. And Grady Jr. was actually the fourth generation in the family to be born with it. Unfortunately, young Grady Stiles Jr.'s severe case not only affected his hands but his feet and legs as well, which meant that he couldn't walk. However, he did have massive upper body strength, which was built up from years of moving around by using his arms. This strength would only help fuel his eventual abuse and homicidal rage. Grady Stiles Jr. was born into the traveling carnival life. His father, Grady Sr., decided to turn the family deformity into a paycheck, and he ended up making a good living as a sideshow attraction. The Lobster family ended up being one of the most popular carnival acts of the early 20th century. Grady Jr. joined the show when he was 7 years old, and he spent much of his childhood touring the carnival circuit. Obviously, he became known as Lobster Boy. The work was relatively easy, as all he had to do was greet visitors, who would stare with wide eyes and happily spend their money to see the show. When Grady Jr. got older, he fell in love with a fellow carnival worker named Mary Teresa. In 1958, Lobster Boy and Mary got married and had two daughters, Kathy and Donna. Kathy was born with ectrodactyly, but Donna was not. So, just like his father before him, Grady Stiles Jr. introduced Kathy to the family business. This new generation of the Lobster family continued touring and making good money, which probably translated to a few $100,000 per year in today's money. From the outside looking in, it seemed like they had built a pretty good life. But behind the scenes, Grady Jr. was starting to become a changed man. Perhaps his condition, nickname, and being a carnival attraction for all those years took more of a psychological toll on Grady Stiles Jr. than anyone realized. Eventually, he began to drink his sorrows away as he drowned himself in whiskey. There was no doubt that Lobster Boy had turned into a violent man, and he was a monster. He was angry, racist, and abusive. Although he was unable to walk, Grady Jr. would quickly propel himself across the floor to headbutt or use his claws to choke his wife. Sometimes Grady would run into his wife and children in his wheelchair for fun. He would also refuse to let them go out in public without wearing large leather gloves, as he didn't want anyone to get a free show. One night, when Grady Jr. was violently beating his wife Mary, his daughter Kathy decided to intervene. This only enraged him further, and he started to beat Kathy as well. At the time, Kathy was 7 months pregnant. She had to be rushed to the hospital, was given an emergency C-section, and gave birth to a premature baby. Eventually, Grady Jr.'s other daughter, Donna, grew tired of the abuse and needed to escape. So, 15-year-old Donna fell in love with a high school dropout named Jack Lane. In 1978, Jack asked Donna to marry him, and she said yes. Grady Jr. wasn't happy with the relationship, and when Donna called with the news, Grady Jr. replied that if she wasn't home in 5 minutes he would beat the hell out of her and kill Jack. Eventually, Grady Jr. seemed to back down and said he would prefer that they married over living together in sin. So, the wedding date was set, and on the eve of their wedding, Grady Jr. summoned his future son-in-law for a private talk. Jack Lane ventured inside Grady Jr.'s trailer and some words were exchanged. Then, Grady Jr. grabbed a gun from under a cushion and shot Jack in the chest. As Jack turned to flee, Grady Jr. shot him again, this time in the back. Jack stumbled out of the trailer as Donna approached. Her psychotic father appeared on the porch and smiled as she held her dying fiancé in her arms. When Lobster Boy went to trial for the murder of Jack Lane in 1979, a media frenzy ensued. Grady Jr. and his lawyers pointed out there was absolutely no way to imprison him, as no prison in the country was equipped to handle his many disabilities. He also noted that confining him to prison would be a cruel and unusual punishment, as he had already been diagnosed with acute liver cirrhosis from all his whiskey drinking and emphysema from years of smoking. Unfortunately, he was right. So, Lobster Boy was convicted of third-degree murder, but he was let off leniently with house arrest and 15 years probation. He had quite literally gotten away with murder. He returned home, where he continued to beat and terrorize his family. One of the lines he began to tell to his family was, "I killed before and got away with it, and I can do it again." Another time, Mary woke up to Lobster Boy holding a butcher knife to her throat. Mary recalled, "He was kneeling by my bed, breathing that whiskey breath. He was drawing the knife across my throat, then he dropped it and crawled away." Mary said her husband's violent streak worsened and he continued to beat her and her mentally disabled son, Glenn, who was from a previous marriage. Until one night in November 1992, mother and son decided they had enough and were ready to put an end to Lobster Boy's reign of terror. So, 3 years after she remarried him, Mary and her son Glenn decided to hire a neighbor to kill Lobster Boy. So, they found Chris Wyant, who was a 17-year-old boy with access to a semi-automatic firearm. Allegedly, Mary paid Chris Wyant $1,500 to kill Grady Stiles Jr. Mary made sure Grady Jr. would be home alone. Then, Chris Wyant walked into the Stiles trailer to find him sitting in his underwear, watching TV. Wyant shot him in the back of the head at point-blank range, and at age 55, Lobster Boy was dead. Thankfully, the man who got away with murder could no longer hurt his wife and children. But would the law have the same level of sympathy for these killers that they did for Lobster Boy? In court, none of them denied their intent to kill Grady Jr., and, during the trial, Mary told the courtroom of her husband's long-term abuse. She told the court that, "My husband was going to kill my family. I believe that from the bottom of my heart." The judge disallowed expert testimony stating Mrs. Stiles was a battered spouse acting in self-defense, saying she was not in imminent danger at the time of the murder. Even Grady Jr.'s other daughter Kathy testified against her father's character saying, quote, "He was like Satan himself, very cruel, very cold-hearted, very sadistic." But, despite the circumstances, unlike Grady Stiles Jr., these killers did not get away with murder. Glenn was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole for at least 25 years. The gunman, Chris Wyant, was sentenced to 27 years behind bars. Mary was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, and in 1997 she was sent to prison for 12 years. She ended up serving half her sentence, and after a successful appeal, was released in the year 2000. Lobster Boy was a terror who left a legacy of abuse and despair. He was buried in Tampa and only 10 people showed up for the funeral. Also, the funeral home couldn't even find anyone willing to act as a pallbearer. Which is quite the lonely ending for a celebrity who spent decades entertaining thousands of people. Death is almost always an unfortunate thing. But sometimes, the end that an evil person meets is truly fitting. Therefore, to some people, Lobster Boy is an example of someone who got what was coming to him. So, what do you think? Do you believe the murder was justified? Or did Mary go too far? Also, do you believe it was wrong for Lobster Boy to not serve jail time? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Also, if you know of any other mysterious, crazy, or interesting stories that you'd like us to cover, just let us know. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, we would appreciate a click on that subscribe button. That way, you can stay up to date when we release our next video about one of the most interesting things in the world. In the meantime, keep exploring.